Blessings. Welcome to today's daily devotional. Today we're in Deuteronomy chapter 8, 9, and 10. Chapters 8, 9, and 10. Good law enforcement takeaway at the very end. But let's hop into Deuteronomy chapter 8. It starts with this emphasis on humility. And humility is such an important character trait for a Christian. It puts us in the right position to hear from God. To be submissive to his authority, and it really lines our life up with his path, lines our will up with his will, our desires up with his desires, which is exactly where we need to be. So he talks about leading the Israelites in the desert for these 40 years to teach them humility. It took them 40 years. He put up with them for 40 years. They complained and they grumbled and they were not at all thankful or grateful for the things that he did. So he kept them wandering around to teach them humility. If you don't know humility or you don't have humility, God will give it to you. He'll show you how to be humble. I think I would rather try and figure it out and become humble without him having to put me in a situation or circumstance where he teaches me humility. Chapter 8, verse 14, it says, "You may say in your heart, my power and my strength have made me this wealth." And what that is saying is, again, humility. We have to recognize that all our gifts, all our blessings come from the Lord. He provides for us constantly. I grew up with dyslexia. I had a hard time in school, but I got through high school and I got through college. And I used to talk about how it was hard, but I was determined and blah, blah, blah. And then I realized it wasn't me who did all that. God allowed me to persist. God gave me tools, put people in my path to teach me and to help me, to grow me to the point where I could graduate. So I can't take credit for any of it because it's all God's blessing and his gifts. Chapter 9, verse 13, the Lord spoke further to me, saying, I have seen this people, and indeed it is a stubborn people. He's still talking about these non-humble Israelites wandering around the desert for 40 years. They're stubborn and they will not give in to God. And they paid a heavy, heavy price for it. We don't want to be stubborn. We don't want to be like that. We need to position ourselves toward God, not with our back to God, but with our face towards God to see what our path is. Chapter 9, verse 26, Moses prayed for the people. Moses prayed for a people that constantly grumbled and complained against him. He was a representative of God, so he took the brunt of all their anger and all their frustration when they got hungry, when they got thirsty, all the wandering. They constantly complained to Moses, and instead of him being frustrated with just hearing their negativity all the time, he prayed for them. How many people do we need to be praying for? Citizens in our community, family members, friends, co-workers. Maybe there's a chief, captain, lieutenant, sergeant, another officer that instead of complaining about them, we need to be praying for them and lifting them up in prayer. It's a really good lesson. Then we'll jump over to chapter 10, verses 12 through 13. It says, and I love this, chapter 10, verses 12 and 13. Now, Israel, what does the Lord God require of you? But to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the Lord's commands and his statutes, which I am commanding you today for your good. One of my favorite verses is Micah 6:8. Listen to it. It says, He has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. These two verses in different parts of the Bible tell us what God requires of us. And if you look at them, they line up. Because in Deuteronomy, it says, fear the Lord. In Micah, it says, do justice. In other words, keep his commands. the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and we will keep his commands. The second one is walk in his ways and love him. Micah says, walk humbly with your God in loving kindness. Back to Deuteronomy, it says, serve him and keep his commands. And that is walking humbly with your God. See humility coming back in there again? I just love how these two match up. And then the last thing, and kind of a law enforcement takeaway of the day, chapter 10, verse 18 says, God will carry out justice on his own behalf, and he blesses us with the opportunity to assist him in that. God is the God of justice. He executes justice for the orphan and the widow, and he shows his love for the alien by giving him food and clothing, and that's what we find out in verse 18. Remember, God's a God of justice, and remember our humility when we're walking and praying to him. We need to be a humble people and not a stubborn people. Tomorrow we're going to be in Deuteronomy 11, 12, and 13, so read up, come back here, and let's find a law enforcement takeaway. Be safe.